Welcome back to another edition of the Young Life Warrior podcast. Today I have an absolutely insane guest who had such a trying youth growing up, but he chose to use those experiences as an opportunity to grow resilience. He is an international best-selling author. He's got a number of books that are coming out this year, and he is winning on TikTok. He has over 305 followers, and he has 2.6 million likes. He is today's modern samurai, Matt Stait. How's it going, my good sir?
Hi, how you doing? Thanks for having me on. Just to clarify that, it's 306 plus thousand, not 306. That's it alone.
There you go. I love that clarification. It's necessary as well, dude. You can't forget that extra 1,000.
Well, I'd be happy with 300. I just enjoy being on this, so it's all good fun.
Yeah, well, and to be honest, buddy, looking at it, it's so helpful. There was the Bow Staff spin that you've got. You're helping people of all ages to help grow self-defense, and I think as a byproduct, I think you were already doing this, but it grows confidence as well. I personally think.
Oh, totally. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I started it in the first place. Was that's why I started my own training is the confidence side of it, and that's why I promote it as heavily as I do. Is because of that. It's not, when I talk about martial arts and I talk about the passion that I have for it, it's not a passion for violence or for hitting people. It's a passion for the confidence and the life skills that brings.
Yeah, and to be honest, that's quite clear in the messaging. As you're promoting that, it's almost as if you're not telling people to go look for trouble for this newfound skill that you've got, that how to potentially knock somebody out or how to injure somebody so you can escape it. It's more of this is to inspire confidence so you can walk down the street with your shoulders and your head held high. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's having. There's so many elements to confidence, isn't there? As
yes,
and that's a thing that we could talk about for forever and never really managed to find all of the answers. But for me, confidence was one of the essences of confidence is find something you enjoy doing, get really good at it. And that is, in a nutshell, that really does enhance people's confidence. Once you get good at something, once you master a skill, whatever it is, it doesn't make a difference, whatever you like to do. Once you sort of go down that pathway and you overcome all of the challenges that are faced, then each challenge that you overcome builds confidence. And by the end of it, you're suddenly a much more confident person. It's a byproduct of the journey, but a very, very valuable one.
Yeah, amazingly put. And you've overcome a lot of challenges. I've had the privilege of speaking to you in the past, Matt, and if for those of you that are listening to this for the first time, for people that don't know you, Matt, how would you wrap yourself up in a nice bundled nutshell?
What you mean, like a quick timeline overview?
Well, you could say a timeline, or you could say who you are and where you were, where you are now, and what you hope to achieve, kind of thing.
Okay. Well, a very quick overview then is I come from a pretty difficult upbringing. There was quite a bit of violence in the home. There was a lot of moving about. There was a lot of bullying in different schools because I was moving from area to area. That was compounded with my father committing suicide. I ended up leaving school having not really connected with school, so I can't blame the system. I mean, I just wasn't really there at that time. Ended up working on building sites for many, many years. Didn't really have anything going for me for a long time, made a lot of wrong choices, found martial arts, got really heavily into that. That was absolutely the key factor in turning my world around completely. Moved into door work, security, did all the bouncing and stuff like that for a number of years, and then worked through the management system, through the event side of things, and learned a lot of really good skills from that, coupled with the martial arts. And then that led to then other things such as opening my own gym, starting to write books, social media things, which brings us to today, where I run a number of different businesses. I've written several Amazon best-selling books. I appear on podcasts and stages all over the world. I have businesses come to me to employ me for my skill base, and I have a completely different life to the one that I had at the beginning.
That's wonderful. That was a very lovely nutshell. Humble nutshell just there. Thank you, Matt. Brilliant. And it's great, isn't it, how you managed to select this road. And I say select because I always believe we are often burdened with choice, and it's almost a bit, like Netflix. If there's too much choice, we tend to stay stale. With yourself, though, having gone through that upbringing, there was an element of you which may have chosen a different path, chosen the wrong path. But what is wrong? It's a very relative term. But to look at you now, if we were to look at you from the outside, we just see, international best-selling author of many books, spoken on stage. You've got 2.6 million likes on TikTok. You've definitely gone viral. You're very famous on TikTok right now. Wow, we think, whoa, what a huge success. But maybe if that stuff didn't happen to you in the past, it may not have led you to this road.
Yeah, very clearly. Yes, absolutely, 100%. It's a really hard, difficult thing, isn't it, to be able to sort of pinpoint where the right decisions were made, or if they even were the right decisions, things like that, or what to blame, who to thank for. It's really interesting because there's a very simplistic story that sums it up. That's really, really accurate in this conversation. And essentially, there were two brothers, and one was very, 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 very wealthy. He'd done very well for himself. The other one was a complete failure at life, and they had an alcoholic father. And when they were asked about it, they questioned the one son, and the one son said, well, the reason that I'm very, very successful, and the reason that I have succeeded, and the reason that I'm so driven is because my dad was an alcoholic. And when they asked the alcoholic son, the son that hadn't achieved anything, the son that was doing really badly in the world, he said, the reason I'm doing very badly in the world, the reason that I have these problems, the reason that I can't succeed is because my dad was an alcoholic. That's just
I've heard that before, but the way you've put that is so much more detailed, and it really hits home. It's true, though, isn't it? We can't pinpoint when we chose to make a decision that was best for us, whether it was on a belief or an experience or what. But yeah, sorry, carry on, Matt.
Well, I was going to say, I often talk about the fact that my father committing suicide was both the best and the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And
wow.
That absolutely creates a very, very strong response from people. Sometimes it's negative, sometimes positive, but it's actually true, and it's a very strange sort of weird dynamic for me to be in, because on the one hand, it was the most terrible thing that happened. There's absolutely no denying that. It was dreadful. It's still dreadful. There's not a day goes by when it doesn't impact my life in some way. So that's a fact. However, what it did do is it made me really, really focus in on my life, my choices, and what I was going to do with that life. I went to pieces after that, really, really, and I just absolutely did. I was doing the wrong things with the wrong people, in with the wrong crowd. A lot of those people are now dead or in prison. So there's no question as to it was the wrong thing to be doing. But then I sort of really heavily got into martial arts, and that was my complete savior. And that's where everything turned around. But that wouldn't have happened, I'm sure, the way that it did if that situation hadn't have unfolded and been presented in the way that it was. So it's a really hard thing to say, but that was the time when I went from being a person that just made excuse after excuse and blamed everybody else to actually being a person that sat there and went, well, do you know what? I'm in this situation because I made it happen. And if I don't want to be in it, I've got to figure out how to fix it. Because there was nobody else to do that. My dad was gone. The person that I'd leaned on all those years no longer existed in the world. So that's that. So that's really why I mean that. And it's a strange sort of juxtaposition of feelings, but very true.
Wow. Yeah. It's whenever I hear stories like that, I've heard your story in the past, and I always go to my dad, and I don't know what I'd do. I do not know what I would do. So for you to have experienced that so early on, and then for you to have the audacity to say it was the best day and the worst day at the same time is really, really amazing, because it's almost as if it's a choice. It's almost as if his passing was almost a gift to your life right now, which sounds horrible. It just sounds super horrible, and I don't mean it. I don't mean any offense, and you know that. But just with that, I know there was a bit of a shadow phase. There was a dip afterwards, and to be perfectly frank, rightly so, that was how you were expressing yourself because of that experience. But now looking at it, just think of the amount of people that you have actually impacted on this planet because of that experience.
Yeah, it's a very, very strange, peculiar sort of thing. I mean, all those years going into schools and talking about bullying, anti-violence, social media use, talking a lot about suicide and depression and prevention and all of that sort of thing. All of those times that I was doing that, there was that very real thought in my head that those are people that can go out in the world, and if only one of those people makes a better choice on the back of it, then it's a worthwhile thing to do, isn't it? I mean, this is why I'm really, really impressed with the work that you do and the stuff that you're trying to achieve, because that's exactly what's happening, and you've no idea the ripples in the pond. You've no idea that somebody somewhere can be profoundly affected by the things that you say and the things that you do. And that's really powerful, because it's powerful in the sense that there's a huge opportunity there, but it's also powerful in the fact that this is a pay forward kind of scenario. You might go out and touch somebody that you don't even know that has been touched by you. They then make a right choice, and further down the line go on to touch somebody else in the right way, and it just carries on forevermore. And that's a brilliant gift to drop into the world, isn't it? I think so. I mean, I had a thing the other day, and it sat me back for 5 minutes, and I had to stop and think about it, because I was like, this is kind of weird. I wasn't anticipating that at all. I was having a chat with an old friend of mine, and I've gone back to school, as I mentioned earlier. I've gone back to school.
Yeah.
I've gone back to university for the first time in a long time. And a friend of mine who's in his early 50s, he's actually decided to take the plunge and do similar, based on the fact that I've done it, and based on the fact that I sort of led by example. And he's now taken the reins and done the same. And he said that it was because that I did it that sort of made him want to go back and do it as well. So yeah, I literally had to go and have a 5 minutes on my own and just sort of think about that.
That's so interesting as well, isn't it? How you managed, for your own life ambition, had an effect. You're just living your life, Matt, and then that had an effect on another gentleman, and I would hope that he gains a lot from his time at university, and essentially that will influence other people and impact other people.
Yeah, of course it will.
Yeah, for you to sit back and register that as well, and have an awareness is amazing too, because how often do we float along this planet not kind of giving ourselves self-value for the right thing? And it's not arrogance, it's more growing of self-belief, I believe.
Absolutely. Again, there's these almost cliched things that people say that you can look at and you can be sort of cynical about them, and that's fine, each to their own. But actually, the reason that they are cliched is because there's usually a certain amount of truth in them, and so they stand the test of time. And when you're talking about the famous one, be the change you want to see in the world, that sort of thing, it really is significant in the sense that you can actually, by changing your actions and what you do, you can have a direct effect, not just on your own life, but on the lives of others.
Yeah, and that, looking at you, Matt, that's absolutely blossomed. I know I've mentioned about your TikTok before, but did you have any idea that it was going to explode as much as it did?
I hoped so. That's the honest answer. Again, I set out purposely to succeed on that. I set myself tasks and I set myself goals, and I see something that I want to do, and then I doggedly go at it until it happens. That's kind of my MO, and has been that way for a long time. I think hard work and determination basically are the keynotes to getting things done, and so basically I saw the platform. I heard it mentioned by a person called Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm not sure if anyone's heard of him, but you know, he's an interesting chap. So I was sat up late one night watching YouTube videos. He came up, he talked about TikTok and said it's going to be a really big sort of platform. I thought, well, that's interesting. I was on a business podcast the next day as a guest, and we talked about it. And I said, I'm going to have a look at this properly. So I did. I really researched it. I really looked into it. I really spent a lot of time understanding how it all works. And then I set myself a task of becoming reasonably popular on there and creating a pretty large community. But the hope was that I could then leverage that and become, if you like, a expert in that space for businesses and for individuals, because there wasn't anybody at that time. So sort of like a year ago, because it's such a new platform, a year ago there really wasn't. There was very sort of traditional marketing types, the kind of people that would sort of, you know, get you on the front cover of a magazine and things, and that's, you know, it's a great skill set to have. Nobody's taken away from that, but they didn't really resonate. And then you had the younger generation, and let's be honest, you know, I'm not 18. I certainly am of an age where I didn't take my clothes off. I look like a lava lamp when I shuffle, right? So there's no twerking going on. So essentially, what I saw was a gap in the expert market, if you will, for TikTok itself. And I thought, I can fill that space. I can go there. I can take that on. I can become that person, and I can, you know, run with that and have some fun with it. And that's exactly what I've done. I've literally set the goal, set the wheels in motion, done the work, put the effort in, and now we're in that position where it's all starting to sort of come to fruition.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. So you created a goal. You then created sub goals for your TikTok. Was that something like 1 video a day or 2 videos a day, or?
Yes, you had. Yeah. So whenever I'm talking to somebody, initially, if you want to grow, the first thing I say to people is you want to be putting up 4 to 6 pieces of content a day. Now that sounds like an awful lot, but bear in mind they're 10 to 15 seconds long, so it's actually less than a minute. And the fact is that you get what you give in this world. There's no denying. Yeah. So, and I'm a huge believer in that. So when I'm talking about anything at all, when people are talking about trying to set goals, achieve goals, and get things done, I always say to people, you have to do the work and put the foundations in. You just have to. There's no shortcut. And if there is a shortcut, further down the line, that will trip you up. It's that simple. So you've got to put the work in. And so things like 4 to 6 pieces of content a day, understanding how it all works, all those kind of things, they were steps, identifiable action steps along that pathway to what I wanted to achieve. So the way that I do these things, the same with book writing, the same with everything, same with building online courses, doesn't matter what it is. I go, this is what I want. And then instead of being like a spoiled toddler and just stamping my feet and demanding the world gives it to me, I then figure out how to get there and what steps I've got to take along the way to make that happen. And then I take chunks out of it. And I just keep doing that until it happens.
Take the chunks. Love that. Absolutely love that. And I think, so you said there, hard work and dedication.
Yes.
And I don't know where consistency fits into here, but looking at you, consistency is key as well. You've got to be.
Yeah, that comes under the sort of dedication mantle, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Consistency with anything is, again, you can put that into a meme if you like and say, well, actually consistency is doing it when the novelty's worn off, kind of deal, and when you're not in the mood. And that's essentially what that is. But that again goes back to martial arts training, because one of the reasons that I became very successful with martial arts and good at martial arts was because of that commitment, because of that consistency, because I showed up, because it was raining outside, it was cold outside, I'd had a rubbish day and I was comfy on the sofa, but yet I still forced myself to get up and go. That is why these things are now the way that they are. And it was those little things. And I actually remember writing quite a good article for this for a magazine a while ago, where I talked about that at length, where I said, actually, it's those little decisions that actually swing as to whether or not you're going to be successful in that endeavor. It's not the big public ones. We can all do that. It's those little micro decisions you make on your own when no one's looking.
Oh, you were singing from an excellent hymn sheet, my friend. 100%. Who are you when no one's looking? And I always think that who you are some of the time is who you are all the time. So if you want to delay and procrastinate and mess around on TikTok and mess around on Instagram or whatever, which is fine. I'm not saying that's a naughty thing to do, but are you going to get the dividends back from doing it? And stamping your feet like a little toddler, expecting the world to give you it, is just entitled rubbish behavior, which will never happen. And it would never help you grow as a person, and it would never help you impact the world, such as yourself. So there was a turning point in your life. I'm not sure, I do know when it was, but I'm not sure what age you were. If you could, I love this, if you could go back, teleport in time to a particular age, what age would it be, and what might you say to yourself as a form of a verbal hug or a motivation or a discipline as to get out there and impact the world, Matt, little Matt? How old would you be, and what would you say?
I quite often have conversations in and around this very sort of subject with people, just as a what if scenario, because it's such an interesting exploration, isn't it? And I don't know. I mean, what I've discovered, I think, is that the child me probably wouldn't like the new me very much, the now me. I think that's a fair sort of thing to say. The thing is, there are so many things, right, where with the wonder of hindsight, it's great because you can look back and say, oh, I wish I hadn't have been that stupid then, or I wish I hadn't have done that, or I wish, and it's so easy to do that. But actually, when you think about it, and you think about not the trick with this, I find, is not looking at it from the point of view of today. It's thinking about it from the position then. At which point would that have been the most impactful? And being absolutely honest with you, it wasn't any of the major things. And I've thought about this quite a lot. And there was a time when we moved, right? And we moved quite a lot when I was young. And so I was probably around the ages of 9 or 10 at this point. And we'd moved. My parents got divorced. There was not a great deal of money at all. Things were pretty bleak. And we'd been sort of shoved around these council estates and things. And we'd moved yet again. And I was getting bullied yet again. I mean, really badly bullied, horribly bullied, to the point where I just didn't want to go out the house. And there wasn't a good day that I could pick out where, and I was getting that in the house as well, by the way. There was violence in the home as well. So it was pretty relentless at that time in my life, right? And that really was one of the fundamental times when I think I would have liked to have spoken to myself, because we moved again. And when we moved again, the same patterns evolved and the same problems occurred, right? And the truth is, although all of those things was horrible and I was a victim and I didn't deserve that to happen to me, right? The thing is, I was doing things myself to make those things reoccur. No matter where you go, there you are. Again, it's one of those things that they say, isn't it? And so I think I would very much like to go back and talk to myself as a 10, 11-year-old child during those times and just explain some of those things and explain the reasons why. Because whenever somebody's being really badly bullied, it's absolutely horrendous and horrible. It really is. But there are reasons why. And there are reasons why for everybody in the picture as well. I mean, bullies are bullies mostly because they've got their own issues and problems to deal with, and they're in pain as well, which is why they want to share that out to everyone else, right? And if I'd have understood that at 10 or 11, that I think that would have made a fundamental difference to the way I saw the world and lived in that world at that time, because it wasn't very happy.
Yeah, and I was bullied as well when I was younger, and looking back, it was horrible. Hated it. It was the worst thing in the entire world. Now, very contrary to popular belief, I say to people, adults as well as kids, after this information I'm about to give you, if you then are being bullied, that's your fault. That's your choice. It's your choice you're being bullied. And I do get a lot of raised eyebrows and a few ruffled feathers from that, especially from parents thinking, well, no, well, it's not my son. It's that boy over there. He's just been a brat. He's hitting my son. He's doing this. First of all, let me just clarify. I don't believe that hitting is bullying. I believe that's assault, physical assault, because if I was to do that in Tesco, I would get arrested. So that needs to be reported ASAP, very, very quickly. For me, bullying is a relentless torment and torture verbally over a group of people, or one person to another person over a long period of time. And I say to kids, I say, "What, are you still being bullied?" So, "Oh, well, why are you choosing to be bullied for?" And again, if you raise eyebrows and thinking, "Oh, what do you mean? I'm not choosing to be bullied." Well, if you behave in this way and you have this self-belief just here, and you do this attached to saying, you understand why this person is doing that to you, and you understand your behavior, and you're not behaving like a target, and you're not believing what they're saying, so they can say something, "Oh, you're a stupid, spotty idiot." And if I'm not spotty, and I know that I'm not an idiot, then I'm not going to be upset, because no, it's not true. It's almost as though someone said to me, "Oh, you got look at you, purple hair freak." Well, I don't have purple hair, so why would that upset me? You know, I think a lot of the time people get upset because that's part of someone's insecurity, and they believe it's true. So if you choose to believe the bully's words, then they're right. And I don't want that to happen. And to sum all of this big long conversation up, I say that because I want to give the accountability and the responsibility to the child or to the adult to realize that their own emotions belong to them, and they have a choice to let that garbage in or not. So what might you say if you could go back to a time in your past, or you saw a child being bullied, and you must have that in your dojo. You must have that. This is probably one of the main reasons why kids come to you, put their trust and faith into you. What do you say to them? Do you say any words to them? Do you help them understand their psychology? Do you help them understand the bully's psychology? Is there any body movements? What would you say?
Well, and there's a couple of points I'd like to come back on that as we go along, if I may. But
please.
Yeah, there's a fundamental thing where we're in agreement, and that is there has to be some kind of ability to regain the rudder, if you will, and go back to steering your own ship. And so all of those, there has to be some kind of central point where you can take charge of, of who you are and what you are. And the outside influences, they do still affect, of course they do, but having an understanding of them makes things a lot better. So I've been on this quest for a very long time where, I put myself on the door of nightclubs and pubs and bars. I confronted all kinds of very challenging situations so that I could understand the fear in myself, and I could figure that out. And I've looked at that at all kinds of different levels. So there's an explanation of fear, what it actually is, what it's meant to do, because it isn't actually a negative thing, and people misunderstand that quite a lot. So first I would explain what that is, what it's meant to do, how that is meant to work with us, for us, not against us, and how we can utilize that and turn that into actual positive energy that we can then give back out into the world. And then secondly, as you rightly said, it's how we react to a situation is really what determines the outcome. We all have things in our life that knock us down. We all have things in our life that are difficult and challenging, and it's how we react to those. And we should really actually be grateful quite a lot of the time for those challenges, because one of the things, and this is an absolute key point on this, one of the things that I found to be almost entirely true, there are exceptions, but for the most part, and that is the kids that are being bullied, the kids that are struggling, the kids that are different, the kids that are finding it hard are normally the ones that actually go on to succeed by using the very talents and things that they were being bullied for. And I'm talking now from somebody that's been alive for quite a long time now, and I've seen generations of people go through this, and I've worked with generations of families going through this, and that's what I've seen. So if you're in that position right now, believe it or not, one day you will look back at the very small world that you inhabit now and wonder what on earth why on earth you let those people do that to you? Because trust me, it is a tiny world, and you will outgrow it massively, and you will look back at those people and just shake your head and think, well, that's, if that's the tiny little sad life that they want, great, have it. That's yours, but don't accept that for yourself. I mean, basically that's it. Don't accept it for yourself. Make sure that you don't let that happen to you. But then that takes us right back to that gaining confidence, that getting good at something, getting the right people about you, doing what you want to do in the way you want to do it, because that confidence then grows,
Yeah.
So that was kind of a bit of a ramble there, but but yeah, it's a hard one, because it's never black and white. It's never black and white. And I would never say to somebody being bullied that, it's your own fault. However, I would very much try and show that there are lots of things that we can do to help ourselves. And that's very much the case. There are lots of things we do help ourselves, and get an understanding of the situation, including, like I said, what fear actually is and what it means and what it does. And so all of those things are really, really important. But another thing to consider is, and this is really shoring up what you said, what I see often, I don't just see kids coming to me because they're being bullied. I see grown adults coming to me because they're being bullied. I see actual grown people with children of their own who are being bullied in the workplace because they never learned the skills and never became resilient enough and confident enough within themselves to be able to deal with it. So the problem is perpetual. It won't go away if you don't change it. And that's really important. I think that's kind of the message. It's not going to stop unless you change it.
Agreed. 100%. Yeah. Just to clarify as well, by the way, Matt, I don't go around telling victims of bullied that it's all their fault and walk away. I gauge your reaction. I see if it's necessary, if this personality is able to take on board that information, then I do say it just to see how they react, and then I understand how they feel about it. How do you feel when I said that? What can we do? And then we go down the road of their mindset, fear, how fear is actually good and how it can help us, how failing is actually good and how we can fail, how to stand up for ourselves, what body movements to do, what mindset techniques to have. I was working with an amazing boy called Owen, who, and I'm okay to share this, I've asked for permission, and he was sitting next to a boy in class, and Owen was just a lovely boy, Matt, just so kind-hearted, very motivated and dedicated to what he wants to do. This is primary school, and the boy that he was sitting next to just said, "Oh, why don't you just go and die?" And it was like a huge shock to him. Poor little lad. Nobody deserves to hear that information. Now, if you and me receive that information, we would, I'm almost positive, offer to help the person that said it to us, because there's a lot of torment that's going on inside there, because we wouldn't take that on board. We wouldn't say, well, okay, well, I'll go and die then. Or we wouldn't even react to it and say, why don't you F off, mate? And sock him one. We wouldn't need to do that. We'd understand that that's obviously come from a place inside of himself or herself. So perception is projection. But little Owen didn't understand this. We went through all of the training, and we did this really cool. So if you want to use this, guys, we did this really cool mindset technique where one of his favorite superheroes, Iron Man, and when Iron Man presses his heart thing, he gets his armor on, and when he did that, but his favorite, we empowered his favorite color, which is blue, and instead of that, it was like a blue force field. So all these things that came off and just pinged along. It did take. I did say that wasn't his first time of this boy saying that. It was probably going on for about a month, because he was too afraid to share with his mom. This is why his mom came to me, and we spoke about this. And since then, of just doing that and understanding the boy's psychology, he didn't let it in, and he said, "Would you like me to help you?" And I was just like, oh, I almost cried. I was so proud of him. Would you like me to help you, or would you like me to go and speak to Miss about what you've just said to me, because I'm worried about you? And it was just like, I'm going to cry. I'm going to cry. That's absolutely amazing. How he had complete strength, mental toughness to endure what he went through, which may have not been a lot. He didn't get punched or anything, but even still, it's not a very pleasant thing to have. But he took on board for himself, and then just absolutely shone. And it was just like, wow, I'm so proud of this boy. And this boy could take it for me saying, well, it's going to be your fault now, isn't it? Let's see what happens.
That's an example of true strength, isn't it? To react with kindness is true strength.
Yeah. And I love the way I'm going to use that. Actually, I'm going to steal this one from you, Matt. You've got to get back your rudder, because essentially it's your ship. And I like that. Maybe that could be a bit more of a gentle way that I approach other children.
I'm going to be absolutely honest here, right? Because I think sometimes there's a misconception that people have that because we're the ones doing the talking, we never wobble, we never struggle. You know, we're this immovable mountain, you know, forging our way through life, and nothing ever goes wrong for us. You know, but sometimes there's that perception there. It's completely untrue. It really is. You know, we do, of course, we wobble a lot. I mean, I had a really difficult wobble the other day. You know, we're in very uncertain times. We're in difficult times, and I was talking to somebody whose opinion I count highly and who I respect, and basically they just talked to me about you're the driver of the bus, right? And this was the analogy used, and for some reason the simplicity of it really sort of struck me, right? So you're the driver of the bus. So firstly, you decide the destination. You also decide who gets on and off your bus. You also decide, you know, where that bus is going and when it's going there, right? You're in charge of all of those things. And so who you let on and off your bus that's up to you. And that determines whether you have a nice journey or not a nice journey. Your job is to point the bus in the direction that you determine that you're going and get there and make sure that the loos are fine, everyone gets a sandwich, we all have a little sing along, and it's great. You know, who you let on and off your bus is what determines, you know, how the journey goes. And that really sort of resonated in my mind, because I wasn't having the best day. And that, for some reason, the simplicity of that just struck home. And it was like, do you know what? It made total sense. You know, why am I letting these people on my bus? Yeah. And that was it. That simple.
How profound are the most simplest of explanations?
Yeah, I know, isn't it?
Yeah, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. I do like that a lot. Keep it simple, stupid. I love it. Yeah, and I do want to highlight the fact that you said that there's many adults out there that are being bullied by other adults, and they are continuing to be bullied by those other adults because they haven't had a spark, they haven't changed their behavior. I think you will always receive off certain people what you put up with. You know, you will always get that if you don't change. I'm working with 2 clients at the moment who are being, air quotes, walked all over at work, and it's only because they're letting them do that. They're not standing up for themselves through a fear.
Yeah, there's an unfortunate truth in the world, right? And again, some people just either don't want to accept this or would rather pretend it's not real, just because it's much easier to do that than face those demons head on, if you will, right? And the fact is, there will always be bullies in the world, and there will always be people that are prone to bullying if they're allowed to behave that way.
Yes.
And so the best that we can do is actually give people the tools to deal with that, not avoid it or pretend it doesn't exist. I mean, why should I spend my life hiding from people who don't know how to behave? That's not it at all. What we actually need to do is accept that it's real in the world and deal with it at the root cause.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Now, there's a lot of tools on your TikTok page that help people, and you've also got books that could probably help other people as well. What would you say to a child? And you know what, many people listening to this will have the answer to it, but it's quite hard to do this for a child. But what you say to a child that's subjected to some cyberbullying, whether it be on Instagram or even TikTok? If they saw you and left you a message and said, "Oh, Matt, there's this boy's telling me to do this, and this. This is a girl that she's telling me, she's saying I'm a fat loser and I'm smelly and I should go and hurt myself and I don't want to do that." How might you soothe that or empower them more like?
Well, a mildly flippant response would be go and look at my TikTok, because if you want to see people being nasty and saying offensive things, go have a look at mine. I get called all sorts of things,
Yeah.
and it's it really is. No, it's unfortunately we live in a world now where it's impossible to sort of get away from it, in the sense that when I was young and we didn't have these kind of connections through social media, we could literally go and lock ourselves in a room and a physical space away from it. Now that we're all interconnected through our phones, we're instantly all of the time connected, and so it's harder that way. I mean, there's the obvious things, isn't there? You know, block people, all the rest of it, that sort of thing. But and these are all right things to do, by the way. So I'm not saying don't do them. Or what I'm saying, these should be part of a wider whole, right? So it's not enough to just block a person on a particular platform, because that person will still do what they're doing in other areas if they can. And so that, again, that's a short-term solution to the problem. It really, for me, it is all about, you know, giving that person the skills to be resilient and to be able to not allow that to happen in their world. So yes, block them. Yes, you know, make sure that you're doing everything you can so that they can't impede in your world. You know, block them on those platforms, but give yourself space away as well. And I think this is relevant completely, because one of the problems I see a lot of the time is that everybody is so immersed in this digital world that they're missing out on the very real world that's happening all around them. And so, you know, switch the thing off, unplug it, turn it off completely, go for a walk and just suck up the wonder that's around you. You know, I mean, there are so many great things in the world, and we need to, that's one of the problems that I find quite often, or I found myself at the time, was being in that seemed to be my entire focus. And I couldn't sort of step out of that and find other things to focus on. And so, you know, I'd step away from it, definitely. So, you know, block people where you can. Understand that they're in pain. That's why they're doing it, and they want that reaction, and you don't want to give that to them. But then also, you know, step away from it, turn it off, go do something else, focus on something else. Understand the beauty of the world, because there's lots of it there. Go find it.
Love that. I'm just writing that down, actually, Matt. Block, understand, report if you need to, and get out. move, do something. Or no, you said space, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, I live in a beautiful part of the world. I'm very, very fortunate that I live in somewhere that is that's full of nature, it's full of beauty, it's full of wonder, and it's that wonder that is something I think that we as a race are disconnecting from far more than we should. And I think it's really important. And bear in mind, if I'd have said to my 12-year-old, 10-year-old self this now, and I said, you know, about exploring the wonder of nature and all the rest of it, my 12-year-old self would have looked at you and said, what? However, believe it or not, that is exactly where my sanctuary was as my 12-year-old self. I would take myself off to the woods. I would take myself off to, you know, the fields where nobody else was. And I would sit there and, you know, and I would just sort of be aware of all the stuff that was around me. And I still do that to this very day. I mean, that's one of the great gifts that we've been given, is that you don't have to go very far to see something utterly amazing that just pales everything else into insignificance. You know, it's incredible. I mean, just the smartphone itself. Okay, so somebody's shouting at me through the smartphone. Okay, somebody's shouting at me through Facebook, Snapchat, whatever it is. Do you know what? That's not very nice, I'll grant you, but isn't it amazing that somebody can do that? Isn't it amazing that we have the technology in this world that's a possibility now, that I can actually, you know, have people doing that from anywhere in the world? Just the sheer wonder of that. Focus on that. Find the wonder in the thing, and, you know, ignore everything else.
Yeah, that is wonderful. You know, 100 years ago, if somebody said to somebody, oh, there's going to be this magic box that has pictures in it that move, and you can talk to other people, other kingdoms from around the world, and there's behave yourself, shut up. Turns out there's everything in it. There's everything in this.
Yeah, well, I sometimes used to tell, when I was going into the schools quite a lot, I'd sometimes tell this story about romance as a teenager back then, right? And back then, we all lived in a world where phones were attached to the wall. You couldn't wander off with them. They were attached to the wall. And the way that they used to work was they didn't have any screens on them or anything like that. It was purely voice. The way that they used to work for most people's houses is they'd have a specific phone chair that you sat in and you would talk on the phone. Normally, it was in the hallway. And so what would happen is you'd be sat there in the hallway with your teenage crush, having some, rather embarrassing conversation with your parents literally 3 feet away, indulging every now and again in throwing a few quips towards you and teasing you. And the privacy factor wasn't there, and it was hugely embarrassing. And so my way around that was there was this phone box that was a few streets away from my house, and so we'd arrange a set time, and I'd scuttle off to this phone box with my jacket on, and I'd sit there in the phone box for half an hour shivering, saying all the things that I couldn't say in front of the parents.
I know, it's so amazing, isn't it? I reckon there's children these days that just think, you had a phone that didn't have a picture? You couldn't even say, what?
There are so many things now, aren't there? I mean, things like just Googling the internet itself. I mean, I grew up without those things, and it's really bizarre that for people these days to think that was ever a world. The idea of no, you had to actually go to a physical building and find a physical book with the physical writing in it to learn that piece of knowledge. There was no Googling anything.
I know.
It is a wonder. I mean, that's the thing. It genuinely is a wonder. And as long as we hold on to that and we see all the good within it, and highlight that rather than the bad, then I think that's a healthier way of going about it.
Yeah, I think so as well. And it's obviously the social media industry, they like to prey on their primal needs, which keeps us locked in with the algorithm and stuff. And when people are being mean, we want to understand why we're being mean as a protection mechanism and a survival mechanism, but we don't really need to do that as such right now. We just need to do or get out. And the thing is, with social media, it's so instantaneous happiness, isn't it? All I have to do is just pick up this little electronic box thing, tap it a few times in a certain method, and hey presto, I've got a TikTok video of a cat playing a piano, or a man doing martial arts, or a man telling me how to be happy. Whereas and that's so easy. Whereas putting my shoes on, putting my coat on, going for the long walk, the walk itself is effort, apparently. But we both know that after the walk, or after the run, or after going to the gym, or after playing with our friends basketball on the court when we're allowed to, it gives us so much more happiness to do that, and it lasts longer. Because yesterday I had a little look on TikTok. I don't remember what videos I was watching. No idea. But the happiness came quickly, and the happiness went quickly.
Yeah.
So those things that take a lot of effort, that's hard to get through, help us sustain long-term happiness, which makes you think. So you and me, we endured this phone attached to a wall. We endured the library. Nowadays, kids don't.
I'm sure that's a bit. Endured isn't quite the right word, because we didn't know any different. If we had to go back to that now, that would be enduring it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what do you think the kids these days? Do you think they might need some method of hardship or to toughen them up? Because how do you feel about this snowflake generation word that's been thrown around left, right, and centre?
It's such a contentious kind of vibe at the minute, isn't it, with regards to how people are feeling about all of this. And firstly, who am I to judge anybody else on anything, really, especially personal struggles and whatever, because we all have a completely different life, and we all got even brothers in the same house, even twins in the same house, there'll be differences. And so firstly, it's not my place to judge in that respect. I can certainly sort of offer advice and wisdom from some of the experiences that I've had, but they won't be exactly the same. What I found, and this is something that's backed up not just by me but by other people, is that realistically, when you say, do we all need more hardship? Should they go through terrible things, right? Perhaps that's an unpleasant, maybe a little bit of a cruel way of saying it. I think a better way of saying it is that we all need tension within our lives. We all need to have problems to solve. That's part of our existence. When people say, oh, I just want to be happy, they misunderstand what that actually means. We actually need problems in our life. We need to have that for us to grow as human beings, for us to evolve. And so if you think about tension, if you think about stress, if you think about going through any kind of hardship, and you look at that like elastic band, it's that tension that expands the elastic band, and that's what we need to grow, isn't it? Obviously too much snaps, but for us to grow, we need it. And this is a really difficult one, because it's something that I say but sometimes gets misinterpreted, and that is that almost everything bad that's happened in my life further down has led to good. There's been a lesson learned, or a skill learned, or even if it's just a bit more resilience to the world, or a understanding so that I don't repeat the same mistake again. It's that sort of thing. So there's a payoff for a lot of it. And so even though it was uncomfortable at the time and unpleasant at the time, I do think that we do need to have hardships, and I do think that young people do need to have hardships. One of the things I find really interesting, and that is the fact that literally every other culture in the world throughout history, they've always had a sort of rites of passage and a ceremony to grow into adulthood. And it's been a very significant part of their community, their culture, their heritage. And they've always done that. And they all do it roughly around the same kind of age range as well. And so when you look at that and you see that everybody has had that historically right across the world, but yet we've taken that away as a society, that I think is more problematic than what people call a snowflake generation. I think the fact that there isn't any obvious rite of passage anymore for people means that there's a struggle into becoming a young adult, into becoming a standalone human being that is responsible for your own actions, because we as a society aren't giving them the tools to do that. And that's on us. That's not on them. That's our fault, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And if you were to type struggle into Google, you'll get something along the lines of breaking free of old restraints. So essentially what you said, growing. The whole purpose of us human beings on this planet is to grow and thrive by creating new experiences, by creating new beliefs, by growing physically as a person, or growing mentally tougher, or even, and now obviously if we're not talking about the caveman times, financially. And I think we need to go through these hardships and these battles, but we need to be really solid in our thinking about who we are as we go through them, and as we endure them, and as we do struggle. And like you say, I would not want to wish any pain and struggle on anybody. I wish we could all be all happy days and hunky-dory. Unfortunately, that does not breed success. And I think there's many children on this planet that have such a huge opportunity to create their own success, which will impact all the other young minds in our future.
Yeah. There's how could you realistically, how could you possibly say to somebody, this is the job I want you to do, but I'm not going to teach you how to do it or give you any tools?
Yes, absolutely. Well, look at relationships. We get one lesson every single day for our young life about a relationship, and that's when we look at mum and dad, if you're lucky enough to have mummy and daddy. And then we go into our next relationship thinking that's the right way to do it, but then the other person that we're with has their way of doing it, because they've experienced a completely different kind of relationship, and that's where that can tend to be some friction or some struggle or tension.
Well, if you're again, if you're sort of looking down that route, then that's actually a really, really unfortunate and difficult thing, because the truth is that relationships that are damaged, for want of a better word, they recur through the generations if it's not resolved. And that's true. And that is something that, again, I've seen an awful lot of over the years, and I'm something I'm aware of myself, because having grown up in a difficult home situation where relationships weren't healthy, It's been a lifelong battle to actually learn what a healthy relationship is and be able to sustain it without self-sabotaging the blooming thing and making problems for myself, you know. So yeah, when you're actually looking at that, the truth is that the responsibility is on us to give the skills required to be successful, you know, and setting people up for success rather than failure should be something that we focus on far more than just blaming them for the things they're getting wrong.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Because essentially we're all here together, and we want to see every single one of us thrive because we're all on one planet.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I keep going back to the same thing with the sort of wonder in the world. And if I was a young person right now today, and I had the ability to have the world's knowledge at my fingertips, if I had the ability to see the world and everything in it at my fingertips, you know, that is an amazing gift. It genuinely is an amazing gift. And I think people that are born into that perhaps don't understand what they've been given, just because it's normal, if you like, but it is this most amazing gift. And it's up to us how we utilize that and what we do with it. I mean, when I wrote a book, right, the first time I wrote a book, I spent ages scribbling and I sat on it for years. So I wrote like half a book was scribbles, right? And then I sat on it for about 3 years. And I spent 3 years telling myself that there's no way that anybody will want to read anything that I've written. And what the hell am I doing writing anything anyway? Because I left school with nothing. I haven't got a clue. I don't know how to spell very well. You know, as my partner quite often tells me, I'm a bit free with my apostrophes and they go over here and over there and not always where they should be. And it's something that I beat myself up. You know, I didn't have to worry about bullies. I was doing that to myself quite happily, right? So I spent a few years telling myself that I can't, it's not worth it, it's rubbish, nobody will like it. And, you know, and I did myself down terribly. But then it was a case of, well, actually, I really do want to do this. The voices wouldn't go away. You know, they were just there and they'd keep resurfacing in the back of my mind going, you want to do this, so just do it. You know, whatever the world says doesn't matter. You've done the thing that you wanted to do. And that's really where I'm getting to with this, because to do it, I went to the internet and I looked and I searched and I found all of these amazing tools that helped me to understand what I needed to do to make it a reality. I found all these wonderful people that were willing to give me advice, people I'd never met. And I'd reach out on these forums and these Facebook groups and these platforms, and I would say, help, I'm a bit lost. And these amazing people would come back and they would do that and they would give their time freely. And lo and behold, what do you know? Suddenly there's an actual real book in this world that I created with the help of this magical thing called the internet. I mean, it is a gift. There's no other word for it.
Yeah, it is a gift. And I think what makes it as a gift is that we see it that way. We have a choice to condemn it and damn it. We have a choice to see social media as toxic and venomous, cancerous.
We've had this problem, right? We have had this problem since we existed, right? You know, when the first fish climbed out up the beach and went for a walk, right? if that's how it happened, okay? Ever since that day, we have been fighting the same battles, right? And the same problems. The only thing that's different is the technology, right? So you talk about the internet, but if you change the word internet for fire, you will have exactly the same conversation.
Wow, I've never seen it that way, but that makes perfect sense. Exactly the same. Oh yeah, of course it does. Yeah. Well, Matt, I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you so much for coming on board. Young, a very, very apt person to have on the Young Life Warrior podcast, having been a warrior yourself and still continuing to be a warrior. Now, before we do go, is there any place, apart from the obvious, that we can find you? I know you're on TikTok as the Modern Samurai.
Yeah, all the usual sort of platforms. So you can find me either as Modern Samurai or Matt Stait, S-T-A-I-T. It's written down on the thing there. Either of those, all usual platforms. And yeah, I'm more than happy to answer any questions if anybody wants to know anything.
Yeah, so it's Modern Samurai and then MA, everybody, just to see that. If
On
it
TikTok, yeah. So on TikTok,
TikTok.
Modern Samurai MA, YouTube, Facebook, all the rest of it, it's Modern Samurai Online.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Do you have any parting words before you do leave?
Not really, apart from the fact that it's been a great conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I always enjoy chatting with you, and I do think you're doing a fantastic work. So, yeah, so keep that up, and yeah, hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Oh, we will do. Well, you're at university now, so when you become a doctor, speak to you in 3 years' time.
Yeah, that's a little way away for.
I'm sure we'll speak before then, though, mate.
All being well. All being well.
Yeah. All right, buddy. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute honour and privilege, like it always is. Everybody watching this, remember to check out Matt Stait and remember to check out his TikTok as well. And I hope you got a lot today. I have. Everybody, peace out.
Bye-bye.